against the stream. It don't matter what race or creed, because you love this land and you're my brother. And that ain't place to know your stand. If you say you can't breathe, I'll show you we can. Ain't never gonna stop believing. We were born for freedom. We're born for freedom.
Booyah. What's up, Ragers? Wait a few minutes. I'll just, chit chat. Let a couple people get in here. Thank you for those who are going to be arriving on time. For the rest of y'all, you're forgiven. Yes, this is what my hair looks like when there's nothing in it. You know, it's like super puffy. Big hair, don't care. Big hair, don't care. I feel like Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan. Shaka Khan. All right. Let me put my background on. But I wanted you guys to see how big my hair was. This is what Jenny really looks like. No filters, bitch. No filters. Yes. Work, bitch. Work, bitch. Okay. All right. So I am so excited to finally be doing this. Today, we will be reading the preface, or as I used to say it before I learned how to pronounce it, I used to say preface. The preface of this book. Yeah, I'm so tired. This book, The 33 Strategies of War. This is written by Robert Greene. Many of you know who he is. I'm sure you've seen his videos. I'm sure I'm sure a lot of you have read the book 48 Laws of Power, which I think is one of the more famous titles that he has written. I've met more people who've written that book than read this book. Bleh. I'm really tired. What's up, Fat Jew? Fat Jew in the house. How'd you doing? Yes, more people have read that book than read this book. But it's funny, and we'll hear this later on in an interview. He was inspired to write this book by reading this book. And we finished our Art of War series over a month ago. So if you haven't gone back to watch the 5-part series, please go back and watch it, because that is the preface to the preface. Really, I didn't sleep all day. I slept some of the day. I still woke up on time, the same time I usually do. I had a nightmare again last night, and then I just been in bed all day, recovering from a long work week, because sometimes it just be like that. Yeah, I know. Thunderfoot is on TikTok, and he's just like, I need some hair. Yeah, we know, with your bald-headed Randy Jackson looking ass. No, I did take a nap. I slept for about an hour, and I had a really, really beautiful dream. And it was so beautiful of a dream that I've been looking up dream interpretation. Not that, every dream interpretation is going to be different, right? But I've been looking up dream interpretation because I wanted to see if it, what some people would say that dream means, and it definitely has some really positive there's some very positive interpretations with it. So I'm not going to share what my good dream was, but it just made me feel like a mom again. Not saying I'm going to get pregnant, no. But you guys know how much I love animals. So I got to be a mom to a wild animal. That was the dream. What's up? We got Lawrence in the house. Hey, what's up, Lawrence? Happy to have you here. I am live streaming on TikTok at Not Red Pill Rage. So if you've finally broken down and gotten yourself a TikTok account, go follow me there. I am on Gab and Rumble, Red Pill Rage. I am live streaming on Twitch. Excuse me. Also live streaming on Twitter. Twitter hates me. You guys know that, right? But I'm still there. I'm still there. That's how Hotep Jesus found me. I had no idea how many people were following me on Twitter. Like, not how many numbers wise, but like how many like big, activist creators were actually paying attention to me on Twitter. So it's just so weird. It's just so weird no matter where. No matter where I go. But it's always a pleasant surprise. If you guys are on Instagram, I am at RedPillTV1. If you would like to write me an email, I am redpill_rage@protonmail.com. I am mentioning this every single live stream we do for the next week, actually for the next 2 weeks. The fundraiser begins next week. We already have had 3 donations come in, and the fundraiser hasn't even started yet. So that's how efficient and effective my people are. So I'm gonna need some money. Okay, break me off. If you think I'm funny, if you think I'm cute, if you think I'm smart, if I've ever made you laugh, if I've ever made you cry, if I've ever taught you anything, if you just like my voice, break a bitch off. Okay, we are going to take care of my friend Zach Reel, who has one of our Boondock Saints who has been incarcerated for a year now, hasn't even been able to see or hold his baby girl. And when the history books are written, I want to make sure that I leave behind proof of what really happened that day. It's a sad, tragic thing that this administration is doing to regular law-abiding patriots. Zach is a veteran. He has served his country, and it's fucked up. So we're going to take care of his wife and his babies, make sure that they have gas in their car, make sure that that baby has Pampers or pull-ups now. Baby, I don't know if the baby's like potty trained or what, but make sure that they are taken care of. Hi, how are you?
Not bad. How you doing?
I'm in the middle of a lecture. I'm reading the 33 Strategies of War. Have you read this book yet?
No.
Okay. Is there anything you wanted to add to the conversation?
Me?
Yeah.
Have you read The Art of War?
I did an entire 5-part series on it.
Jesus.
Yes. Are you following me on YouTube?
No.
Why don't you go over to YouTube and jump in the stream so you can contribute? But the link is in the bio.
Check.
See, this is why I don't usually I don't let anyone in my stream that's like, I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, that's fine. You can go anytime. I got material to go through. So yeah, just come back and watch the replay. I don't expect a lot of people to watch my streams when they are live. I really don't. And my numbers are usually pretty low, to be honest with you. People will watch my stuff the next day. That's usually how it works on YouTube. All right. So, this is how we're going to do it for tonight. I am going to read the preface first. It's 8 pages. And then we are going to listen to about 20 minutes of an interview that was conducted by one of my heroes. And I'm sure he's one of your heroes as well. You guys know him. He still stands tall. Even his daughter stands tall. Dr. Jordan fucking Peterson. Yes. So they had an interview between them, and the interview is an hour and 40 minutes. But we're only going to listen to about 20 minutes of it, the stuff that I thought was kind of motivating and more pertinent to this conversation. So yeah, let's just fucking jump right into it because I've been itching to read this. And it's funny, the book is dedicated to Napoleon, Sun Tzu, the goddess Athena, and my cat Brutus. I thought that was really cute. Okay. Y'all ready? Let's go. We live in a culture that promotes democratic values of being fair to one and all, the importance of fitting into a group and knowing how to cooperate with other people. We are taught early on in life that those who are outwardly combative and aggressive pay a social price, unpopularity, and isolation. Oh, is that why I kept getting fired from jobs? I've kept a lot of jobs though, so and it'd be like that in San Francisco. Trust me. These values of harmony and cooperation are perpetuated in subtle and not so subtle ways. Through books on how to be successful in life, through the pleasant, peaceful exteriors. The fuck? There's no trees in this neighborhood. How the fuck are there birds here? Really? Y'all hear that? Do y'all hear that? Hello, how are you? Okay. That's odd. I never hear birds outside the window. Okay, through books on how to be successful in life, through the pleasant, peaceful exteriors that that those who have gotten ahead in the world present to the public, through notions of correctness that saturate the public space. The problem for us is that we are trained and prepared for peace, and we are not at all prepared for what confronts us in the real world, war. This war exists on several levels. Most obviously, we have our rivals on the other side. The world has become increasingly competitive and nasty. In politics, business, even in the arts, we face opponents who will do almost anything to gain an edge. More troubling and complex, however, are the battles we face with those who are supposedly on our side. Ooh. There are those who outwardly play the team game, who act very friendly and agreeable, but who sabotage us behind the scenes, use the group to promote their own agenda. Ooh, how many people can we name? Hold on, I'm going to shut the window. This is weird. That was so weird because, like, there's like not really that many trees in this neighborhood, and like I never hear birds. Maybe it goes with my dream last night. Remember I was saying how like I was like a mother of a wild animal? Like they're coming, the animals are coming for me. They need me. The animals need me to save the planet. I used to be all like, back when I was young, I was like, oh, the environment. Like, oh, we've got to save the whales. Like, no tuna. Maybe all of that is coming. Maybe my past hippie life is coming full circle. I don't know. Okay. Others, more difficult to spot, play subtle games of passive aggression, offering help that never comes, instilling guilt as a secret weapon. On the surface, everything seems peaceful enough, but just below it, it is every man and woman for him or herself. This dynamic infecting even families and relationships. The culture may deny this reality and promote a gentler picture, but we know it and feel it in our battle scars. Ooh, damn, Robert Greene, just coming out the gate. It is not that we and our colleagues are ignoble creatures who fail to live up to the ideals of peace and selflessness, but that we cannot help the way we are. We have aggressive impulses that are impossible to ignore or repress. In the past, individuals could expect a group, the state, and extended family, a company to take care of them. But this is no longer the case. And in this uncaring world, we have to think first and foremost of ourselves and our interests. What we need are not impossible and inhuman ideals of peace and cooperation to live up to. And the confusion that brings us, but whether practical knowledge on how to deal with conflict and the daily battles we face. And this knowledge is not about how to be more forceful in getting what we want or defending ourselves, but rather how to be more rational and strategic when it comes to conflict, channeling our aggressive impulses instead of denying or repressing them. If there is an ideal to aim for, it should be that of the strategic warrior, the man or woman who manages difficult situations and people through deft and intelligent maneuver. Many psychologists and sociologists have argued that it is through conflict that problems are often solved and real differences reconciled. Our successes and failures in life can be traced on to how well or how badly we deal with the inevitable conflicts that confront us in society. The common ways that people deal with them, trying to avoid all conflict, getting emotional and lashing out. Ooh, Antifa. Turning sly and manipulative are all counterproductive in the long run because they are not under conscious and rational control and often make the situation work. Strategic warriors operate much differently. They think ahead toward their long term goals, decide which fights to avoid and which are inevitable, know how to control and channel their emotions. When forced to fight, they do so with indirection and subtle maneuver, making their manipulations hard to trace. In this way, they can maintain the peaceful exterior so cherished in these political times. So let me just stop there. I'm going to go off on a tangent for a split second. If there's anything that I want you guys to remember out of this book, The Art of War, it is the qualities of a general. So let me just read those to you one more time, okay? Strengths of a general: wisdom, knowledge, credibility, strictness, benevolence, courage, a skillful analyst, unconcerned by fame, unconcerned by punishment, places army first, tranquil, obscure, upright, self-disciplined, a strong commander, clever, inventive, and having all-encompassing talents. These are the weaknesses of a general, the weaknesses of a commander that are going to make the army lose. They would be unenlightened, brutalizes and fears the masses, not strict, loves the people. Okay, and we would normally think that would be something great. But the thing is, when you love the people too much, then you put yourself in a position where you're appeasing the people. You can't, it's like being a parent. You love your kid, but you still have to discipline them. And if you love them too much, what you create is spoiled, narcissistic children who have no boundaries of their own and do not respect anyone else's boundaries. Okay. Committed to life, meaning you are a pussy and you're not going to sacrifice your own or anyone else's, even if that's what's needed at the time. Unable to fathom the enemy. I have been drilling this into you guys for like weeks now. You have to fucking understand who you're dealing with. You have to understand who you're dealing with. Obsessed with achieving fame for purity and vanity. How many activists and influencers and YouTubers are on our side that are doing this? It is driving me crazy. I'm not going to say any names right now, okay? Grifters. Easily angered, okay? That's hotheads. That's people with hair trigger, what is it? Hair triggers, or like just people who cannot control and see and get good intel before they act. I've known so many of these guys who are exactly that way. They'll, everyone will start yelling, like they'll be at a rally and yeah, we're sitting there yelling at Antifa or whatever, and then they decide to pull out the bear spray and then everybody gets it. Trust me, I know. Hasty to act, arrogant, weak, and that is a poor commander. Right, back to Robert Greene. This ideal of fighting rationally comes to us from organized warfare, where the art of strategy was invented and refined. In the beginning, war was not at all strategic. Battles between tribes were fought in a brutal manner, a kind of ritual of violence in which individuals could display their heroism. But as tribes expanded and evolved into states, it became all too apparent that war had too many hidden costs, that waging it blindly often led to exhaustion and self-destruction, even for the victor. Ooh, it'd be like that, I'm telling you. Somehow wars had to be fought more rationally. The word strategy comes from the ancient Greek word strategos, meaning literally the leader of the army. Strategy, in this sense, was the art of generalship, of commanding the entire war effort, deciding what formations to deploy, what terrain to fight on, what maneuvers to use to gain an edge. And as this knowledge progressed, military leaders discovered that the more they thought and planned ahead, the more possibilities they had for success. Novel strategies could allow them to defeat much larger armies, as Alexander the Great did in his victory over the Persians. In facing savvy opponents who were also using strategy, there developed an upward pressure to gain an advantage. A general had to be even more strategic, more direct and clever than the other side. Isn't that what Sun Tzu said? Over time, the arts of qualifications of a general. Over time, the arts of generalship became steadily more sophisticated as more strategies were invented. Although the word strategy itself is Greek in origin, the concept appears in all cultures in all periods. Solid principles on how to deal with the inevitable accidents of war, how to craft the ultimate plan, how to best organize the army, all of this can be found in war manuals from ancient China to modern Europe. The counterattack, the flanking or enveloping maneuver, and the arts of deception are common to the armies of Genghis Khan, Napoleon, and Zulu King Shaka. As a whole, these principles and strategies indicate a kind of universal military wisdom, a set of adaptable patterns that can increase the chances of victory. Perhaps the greatest strategist of them all was Sun Tzu, author of the ancient Chinese classic, The Art of War. In this book, written probably the 4th century BC. Oh, I thought it was written after that. Okay, so you gotta get that timeline correct. Okay. Can be found traces of almost all strategic patterns and principles later developed over the course of centuries. But what connects them, in fact, what constitutes the art of war itself in Sun Tzu's eyes, is the ideal of winning without bloodshed. I think I covered that. I talked about how if you can turn the enemy and get spies, if you can turn the enemy to surrender, and if you can turn the enemy without destroying their property and then you take their shit, that's the best way to do it. By playing on the psychological weaknesses of the opponent, by maneuvering him into a precarious position, by inducing feelings of frustration and confusion. God, I'm sorry, guys. I'm just like totally tongue twisted. I totally read better than this. Hi, April Dawn. Ooh, what's up, Professor Mike? How you doing? You need to put some clothes on in your TikTok videos. Please put some clothes on. Please. Because it's like just put some clothes on, please. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Lawrence. I appreciate that. Lawrence, do you have a wrench? Lawrence, do you have a wrench? Yes or no? I'm pretty sure I gave you one last time. Do you have a wrench, Lawrence? Yes, no. Okay, I'll wait. I'm going to read some more and then I have some directives for you, or at least one. Okay. In this way, victory can be. Okay, can you please escort Patriots Flow out of my chat? Thank you. Sorry, Smeghead. You're like permanently banned from my channel. You need to go. What an intention whore, huh? Total distraction. In this way, victory can be had at a much lower cost, and the state that wins wars with few lives lost and resources squandered is the state that can thrive over greater periods of time. Certainly, most wars are not waged so rationally, but those campaigns in history that have followed this principle stand out above the rest and serve as the ideal. War is not some separate realm divorced from the rest of society. It is an eminently human arena full of the best and worst of our nature. War also reflects trends in society. The evolution toward more unconventional, dirtier strategies, guerrilla warfare, terrorism, mirrors a similar evolution in society where almost anything goes. The strategies that succeed in war, whether conventional or unconventional, are based on timeless psychology. And great military failures have much to teach us about human stupidity and the limits of force in any arena. I've been saying it since the beginning, since I started my channel. I've been saying the commies are never going to play by the rules. So the Patriots need to learn that we can't play by the rules either. But the problem is the virtuousness is a problem. The always wanting to have the moral high ground is why we're losing our country. So think about it. Inculated, I have never seen that word before. Inculated with the values of our times, many will argue that organized war is inherently barbaric, a relic of man's violent past and something to be overcome for good. To promote the arts of warfare in a social setting, they will say, is to stand in the way of progress and to encourage conflict and dissension. Isn't there enough of that in the world? This argument is very seductive, but not at all reasonable. There will always be those in society and in the world at large who are more aggressive than we are. Antifa. And you know what's funny is like Antifa, they're just like the low-hanging fruit. They're just like the pawns here, you know? But you got to start somewhere. This argument is very seductive, but not at all reasonable. There will always be those in society and in the world at large who are more aggressive than we are, who find ways to get what they want by hook or by crook. We must be vigilant and must know how to defend ourselves against such types. Civilized values are not furthered if we are forced to surrender to those who are crafty and strong. In fact, being pacifists in the face of such wolves is the source of endless tragedy. Mahatma Gandhi, who elevated nonviolence into a great weapon for social change, had one simple goal later on in his life: to rid India of the British overlords who had crippled it for so many centuries. The British were clever rulers. Gandhi understood that if nonviolence were to work, it would have to be extremely strategic, demanding much thought and planning. He went so far as to call nonviolence a new way of waging war. To promote any value, even peace and pacifism, you must be willing to fight it and to fight for it and to aim at results, not simply the good, warm feeling that expressing such ideas might bring you. You slayed that. Go ahead, Robert. Tell it. Preach, Robert. The moment you aim for results, you are in a realm of strategy. War and strategy have an inexorable logic. If you want or desire anything, you must be ready and able to fight for it. Others will argue that war and strategy are primarily matters that concern men, particularly those who are aggressive or among the power elite. The study of war and strategy, they will say, is a masculine, elitist, and repressive pursuit, a way for power to perpetuate itself. Such an argument is dangerous nonsense. In the beginning, strategy indeed belonged to a select few, a general, his staff, the king, a handful of courtiers. I don't know that word. Soldiers were not taught strategy, for that would not have helped them on the battlefields. Besides, it was unwise to arm one's soldiers with the kind of practical knowledge that can help them to organize a mutiny or a rebellion. The era of colonialism took this principle further. The indigenous peoples of Europe's colonies were conscripted into Western armies and did much of the police work. But even those who rose to the upper echelons were rigorously kept ignorant of knowledge of strategy, which was considered far too dangerous for them to know. The main strategy and the arts of war as a branch of specialized knowledge is actually to play into the hands of the elite and repressive powers who like to divide and conquer. If strategy is the art of getting results, of putting ideas into practice, then it should be spread far and wide, particularly among those who have been kept traditionally ignorant of it, including women. Yeah. Women are how you get the dirt on people. Just saying. I mean, women make the best spies, right? I mean, I would think. We don't necessarily need to be out there on the battlefield, but we can use our feminine power and our matriarchal power to get information. Yeah, of course. We're soldiers too. Instead of resisting the pull of strategy and the virtues of rational warfare, or imagining that it is beneath you, it is far better to confront its necessity. Mastering the art will only make your life more peaceful and productive in the long run, for you will know how to play the game and win without violence. Ignoring it will lead to a life of endless confusion and defeat. The following are 6 fundamental ideals you should aim for in transforming yourself into a strategic warrior in daily life. Look at things as they are, not as your emotions color them. Judge people by their actions. Depend on your own arms. Worship Athena, not Ares. Elevate yourself above the battlefield. Spiritualize your warfare. So those are just the highlights, and there's like a whole bunch that goes with that, but I'm not going to read it now because I'm looking at the time, and I need to wrap this up in the next 6 minutes so we can get to Dr. Jordan Peterson's interview with Robert Greene. The 33 Strategies of War is a distillation of the timeless wisdom contained in the lessons and principles of warfare. The book is designed to arm you with practical knowledge that will give you endless options and advantages in dealing with the elusive warriors that attack you in daily battle. Each chapter is a strategy aimed at solving a particular problem that you will often encounter. Such problems include fighting with an unmotivated army behind you. Oh God, story of my fucking life. That's what it's called. That's what's called being a junior manager. Never going back. I'm never going back. I'm never going back. Wasting energy by battling on too many fronts, feeling overwhelmed by friction, the discrepancy between plans and reality, getting into situations you cannot get out of. You can read the chapters that apply to a particular problem of the moment. Better still, you can read all of the strategies, absorb them, allow them to become a part of your mental arsenal. Even when you are trying to avoid a war, not fight one. Many of these strategies are worth knowing for defensive purposes and for making yourself aware of what the other side might be up to. In any event, they are not intended as some doctrine or formulas to be repeated, but as aids to judgment in the heat of battle, seeds that will take root in you and help you think for yourself, developing the latent strategist within. The strategies themselves are culled from the writings and practices of the greatest generals in history: Alexander the Great, Hannibal, Genghis Khan, Napoleon Bonaparte, Shaka Zulu, William Tecumseh. I can't say the word, I'm sorry. Erwin Rommel, Vo Nguyen Giap, as well as the greatest strategists, Sun Tzu, Miyamoto Musashi, Karl von Clausewitz, Ardent Dupuy, T.E. Lawrence, Colonel John Boyd. They range from the basic strategies of classical warfare to the dirty, unconventional strategies of modern times. The book is divided into 5 parts: self-directed war, how to prepare your mind and spirit for battle; organizational war, how to structure and motivate your army; defensive war, offensive war, and unconventional dirty war. Each chapter is illustrated with historical examples not only from the warfare itself, but from politics, Margaret Thatcher, culture, Alfred Hitchcock, sports, Muhammad Ali, business, John D. Rockefeller, showing the intimate connection between the military and the social. These strategies can be applied to struggles on every scale: organized warfare, business battles, politics of a group, even personal relationships. Finally, strategy is an art that requires not only a different way of thinking about an entirely different approach to life itself. Too often there is a chasm between our ideas and knowledge on the one hand and our actual experience on the other. We absorb trivia and information that takes up mental space but gets us nowhere. We read books that divert us but have little relevance in our daily lives. We have lofty ideas. That we do not put into practice. We also have many rich experiences that we do not analyze enough and do not inspire us with ideas whose lessons we ignore. Ooh, I might be guilty of that sometimes. Strategy requires a constant contact between the two realms. It is practical knowledge of the highest form. Events in life mean nothing if you do not reflect on them in a deep way. And ideas from books are pointless if they have no application to life as you live it. In strategy, all of life is a game that you are playing. This game is exciting, but also requires deep and serious attention. The stakes are so high. What you know must translate into action, and action must translate into knowledge. In this way, strategy becomes a lifelong challenge and the source of constant pleasure in surmounting difficulties and solving problems. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, so if you haven't already ordered your copy, order your copy. This is Red Pill Book Club. Let's listen. Let's listen to a little bit of Robert Greene. I already got it queued up right where I want it. Y'all ready? Okay. Okay. And I will say this, okay? As much as I love Dr. Jordan Peterson, he did interrupt Robert Greene many times. Okay? He did. Okay? Not cool, but we know how Dr. Peterson is. Like, he never shuts up. We know that. Okay? So we're not going to sit here and act surprised.
This kind of frat house that I went to college in, and way too many people showed up. And
there's a better way to make money on Amazon
Shut
than
up.
selling physical products.
Makers, and we had a table that was pretty full of beer bottles and vodka bottles and so forth. And one guy just went over, like, tore the leg off and knocked the table over. And then a bunch of us got together and chased them all out. And this friend of mine, he said, "Oh, they'll be back." And so he went upstairs and he put on some steel-toed cowboy boots. It was just like a bloody Western. He came marching down the stairs. And just as he entered the living room, there was a big knock on the front door. It was these hooligans coming back to cause grief. And he just didn't break stride. He opened the door. He pulled open the door, and there was a guy standing there ready to fight. And he kicked him underneath the chin with his steel-toed cowboy boot, knocked him right over the front porch. And and the battle was on. But that was exactly what he was like, I mean,
Right.
and he had his shadow was integrated. He was a great roommate. He reciprocated everything. I always knew if I bought groceries one week, he'd buy it the next. Like, he was a straight shooter. You could trust him, but he was not naive, man. And that made him able to deal with delinquents and to help them. So that's part of that integration of that shadow.
Yeah, I go very deeply into the shadow in a chapter in my last book, The Laws of Human Nature. And I try and talk about how one integrates the shadow, because it's not an easy answer for that. People are kind of perplexed. Well, I have this dark side, and I explain a lot of where it comes from and how a lot of your aggressive impulses, like the room of 2-year-olds that you were talking about, you have that as well. I'm talking to the people that my readers. You have that aggressiveness when you were young, and it got socialized out of you, and then it kind of got repressed. And it's like a lost self that lives inside of you and is screaming to come out. How do you integrate it? And so the main thing is you have to be aware that you have this shadow side. You can't run away from it. You have to acknowledge that it exists. You almost have to embrace it in a way.
A good parent too does everything he or she can not to repress that. Like, what you want to do with children is you want them to be forceful. You want them to have some power.
Exactly.
You want them to integrate that capacity for aggression into, well, let's say, lucid conversation. You want them to be able to stand up for themselves in family discussions. If you just punish them for being aggressive, let's say, for talking back or something like that, you don't guide that into more sophisticated development. You see this in schools too now. When my kids went to school, this was so dumb. We had a rule in our house, which was, you don't have to follow stupid rules.
That's a good rule.
But if you get caught, you have to put up with consequences. So one rule was, the school had, not only could you not throw snowballs, you couldn't make them. And so they were trying to, exactly, you should shake your head, that's for sure. It's like, because their answer, and this was all politically correct nonsense, non-competitive games. We're only going to play non-competitive games. It's like, first of all, I studied Piaget.
Yeah.
A hockey game is not competitive exactly, because in a hockey game, no one brings a basketball. Everybody plays hockey. So that's cooperation. And then on the team, you have to cooperate. And like, if you're the star, but you never pass, you're just a dumb son of a bitch. You're not the star. And so there's tremendous amount of cooperation in all those competitive games. They're integrated. And this idea that, you make children better by not allowing them to be competitive.
It's disgusting.
It is. That's the Freudian devouring mother, right? That's, everyone's safe and no one's going to ever hurt anyone. And
that's kind of where a lot of young people are, they enter the world where they've been coddled, where they think that there are no winners, that everyone is, it's just win-win situations. And that's where they get really shocked by the realities of the world. So all this coddling and this idea that there doesn't have to be a winner. We don't have to get prizes for first place. Everybody should get a prize. All you're doing is setting your children up for massive, shocks when they enter the world and they see that it's not like that.
Yeah, and then they get disillusioned and depressed, you know, or traumatized by it. I mean, when my son's hockey team in his school, they won the city championship, which was a big deal, you know, and the school was pretty happy about that. To his credit, so was the coach. But the principal, who was this authoritarian empath, she was an awful person, I thought.
Authoritarian,
you know,
empath. That's
empath.
interesting.
Yeah, well, yeah. So she used
like
moral
that.
virtue as a club.
Yeah.
Oh, and it was, yeah, well, there's plenty of those people around.
Yeah,
And she said, well, really, today we're all winners. And the coach had exactly. No, it is sickening because it's, and you know, my son was just appalled by it, but the coach had enough guts. He said, no, the hockey team won. And it's not like the kids in the school were jealous. Some of them were, obviously, but most of them were really happy, like you are when your sports team wins, that, you know, and most people are generous enough so that they're able to celebrate someone else's victory without. And that's the same. I saw this with birthday parties. I just bloody well hated this. It's like, well, every child gets a gift bag. It's like, no, you know, they have their damn birthday. Every child doesn't need a damn gift bag. And this same naive, treacly, and it's authoritarian too, because it imposes this kind of view of the world. It's like, no, it's this kid's day to be special. That's why we're celebrating this kid. The rest of them, if they can't take that, it's like there's something wrong with the way that they've been treated and attended to.
Well, a lot of my book I've tried to remove the kind of taboo or the negative associations we have with the word like power or with the word ambition. You know, I try and say ambition is a good thing. It means that you believe in yourself, you have some self-love, and you believe you're worth something, and you want to go out and achieve and create something worthwhile for other people. So ambition is a positive thing. But so many people are just kind of embarrassed about being a human being, embarrassed about our primate nature, embarrassed about our own aggressive impulses.
This is partly why boys are failing in our schools now at a disproportionate rate. You know, and I see there's an assault of the sort that you're describing on the better part of striving masculinity. And, you know, I had a friend who killed himself because he identified his ambition with, you know, the patriarchal force that's devouring the environment, let's say, and that's you know, the cause of historical horror. And you might say, well, no one takes that onto themselves to that degree. And that's, well, you can say that, but that you just don't know what the hell you're talking about. People take that onto themselves all the time. And then they start to identify the best part of them that strives forward with the destructive impulses of humanity. And they're so ashamed because they can't do anything good then, but in principle, you know, he tried to be as inoffensive and harmless in every possible way as he possibly could. And it just sucked all the life out of him.
You end up turning that aggressive energy on yourself is what ends up happening. And that's maybe leads to suicide, the ultimate kind of self-aggression. I know that I personally have, as I said, I definitely have a shadow side. I'm very aggressive and extremely competitive, and I have a lot of anger. So a lot of those experiences in my youth made me very angry. But the way I kind of integrated my shadow, I'm not saying this is a model, but the way I integrated it was through my books. I kind of, that anger kind of seeps through the material that I write, and I find I can only write when I have that kind of anger. But I don't rant. I don't yell and kind of put people down. I kind of channel it into something productive and something creative. And so to me,
I definitely do that when I'm lecturing. You know, and people have commented, you know, some of the people who've criticized me that I'm an angry person, and which isn't true, but it's definitely that anger, that capacity for anger definitely is something that gives you force, and it can push, and anger definitely. So psychophysiologically, so imagine that this is obviously a thought experiment, but imagine you're chasing a cat with a broom. Well, the cat's going to run from the broom, but if you corner the cat with the broom, it will attack you, even though it's just a cat. Well, and the reason for that is that fear will facilitate either freezing or escape. But sometimes fear isn't the right response, and anger will suppress fear. And so one of the tools that we have at our disposal psychologically is anger as an antidote to the terror that would otherwise freeze you. And you can integrate that. You know, that's, you know, if you have some justifiable moral outrage, let's say something really annoys you, or I shouldn't say that, deeply violates your sense of moral propriety, I don't mean trivial things, then the fact of that forceful response can motivate you to do things. Well, it does for me for lecture, but certainly to write. It takes a lot of energy to write, man. You need all those sources of energy if you're going to be able to do it. Just and even to turn it on yourself, to discipline yourself, you know. It's like I had to grab myself by the scruff of the neck when I was a young guy to sit down, God damn it, and write. You know, and there's a force that's necessary to, especially if you're open, because you're all over the place, if you're creative, to get yourself to sit down and focus. Yes, that's right. Yeah. And, you know, some of that anger, you know, I think Jung talks about this, is that that dark side contains a lot of energy. It contains a lot of power. Those 2-year-olds that are kicking and screaming, that's all this kind of force behind it. And when you sort of are ashamed of it and you push that down, you're kind of getting rid of an incredible well of energy that you can use for your creativity, for your work, etc. You can take that energy, like you say, and create discipline out of it, do something creative out of it, support some cause that you really believe in, you know. So that shadow side, when you deny it, only negative things will happen. And it is extremely important for people to first recognize it in themselves, you know, and it's very hard for a lot of people to do that. Well, I found, like I said earlier, that one of the best ways in there is resentment. You watch yourself like, well, because if you're resentful, you know, you're feeling like you're being victimized and mistreated. It's like, okay, well, maybe you are. Okay, and you think there's no anger in that resentment, so you're not looking hard enough. No, if you watch your fantasies, for example, if you're resentful and you watch the fantasies that flit through your imagination, like you might not want to attend to them because they can be so brutal. Right. But because if someone is oppressing you genuinely and you're not standing up for yourself, then there'll be these compensatory fantasies. Yeah. So one day I'll tell you a story about that. So one day I'd been renovating my house and it took a long time. And the neighbors, this house was a complete derelict and it was a semi-detached. Like, watch if that builds up inside you. Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of times I look at people.
It's a very interesting feeling.
Cool sculpting is life-changing, like seriously.
People in the public eye who get caught doing something really stupid, like you say, and their first thing will be, well, that wasn't me that did it. I don't know what came over me. That's not who I am. But that is exactly who you are. That is the person who has been carrying this resentment and this kind of inner anger, but not acting upon it. And then suddenly they do something really stupid, like having an affair with a 21-year-old, or you know, they're just caught doing something. Yeah. So I watch people with their children a lot. Hey. Yeah. And so when my son was a pretty assertive kid and tough, like he had a real will. And, you know, when he was 9 months old and started to crawl around, I taught him what no meant. And what no means is stop doing that or something you don't like will happen to you. That's what no means. Right. And so when he was 9 months, he was starting to take books off shelves and get into the plants and so on, because he was starting to crawl around. And so to teach him what no meant, I just grab his leg when he wasn't doing something that I didn't want him to do. And, you know, he would squawk and bitch and complain. And I'd say, no, no, no. And I just hold him until he gave up. And sometimes he would cry. And the reason he was crying is because he was frustrated and angry that I was mucking about with him. It's like, fair enough. He wanted to go explore. And, you know, fair enough, kid, you want to explore. But you can't tear out the plant and get dirt all over the rug. And you can't go into the electrical cords, you know, like, no. And no. And so I had done a lot of behavioral training by that time. And by the time I did that for, say, 6 or 7 days, and soon as if I just said no, he would just stop, and sometimes he would cry. And then the week later, if I said no, he'd just stop. So it took like 2 weeks, And then I knew that if I said no, he would stop. And so then I could let him explore. I could give him a lot of freedom. And then I'd have people come over to my house with their 2-year-old or 3-year-old. And because they had never taught the child what no meant, they never gave, because they didn't want to impose on their freedom, let's say. They couldn't give the child any freedom at all. They had to wander around behind them all the time because they never knew what the child was going to get into.
And so then you start to hate your child, right? Because instead of having a bit of free time and just being able to say no to this kid while he's playing around on his own and giving him some freedom, you're just nonstop monitoring this child, and you're mad because you don't have a life. And we had another couple come over, and they had 2 kids that were like 4 and 5, and they were just horrible. We sat down to eat. We wanted to have a conversation, and we put a basket of bread out, and the kids just grabbed the bread and they ate all the centers out of the bread. And the parents were all embarrassed about it, but they didn't do anything to stop it. And, you know, in their minds, they thought, well, aren't we permissive and nice, and we never say no to our children? But they didn't notice that they actually hated their children, because how could you go to someone's house and you want to have a conversation, you just met them, and your children embarrass you to death, and you think you're not going to get resentful about that?
Right.
And you think you're not going to take, and so here's how people would take it out on their kids. So imagine that happens. Now you go home and you're pissed right off, but you're not going to let yourself know that because you're such a nice person. Then your child goes off and draws a picture. Maybe they put a lot of work into it, eh? Then they come running up to show you. And that's a real good time to give them a pat on the head and say, look, isn't that great? But you're pissed off because you were embarrassed. And so you look at it and you think, and that's all you have to do. It's like, that's not really worthy of my attention. You don't have to say anything mean. You just have to not attend in this manner. And then you got your revenge. And you think you won't do that, man. You know nothing about yourself. And you know, you read in the paper sometimes, these mothers or fathers, they do something brutal to a child. And I know I know how that happens. It's like no disciplinary strategies in the house.
Yeah.
The kid is driving the mother or father crazy. You know, and then maybe the mother or father, they're hungover one day, and maybe they just broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. Maybe they got, you know, hell from their boss, who's a tyrant, and they haven't stood up to them. And the kid does the wrong thing at exactly the wrong time. And maybe he's actually pretty good at that by then. And it's like, out comes Satan himself. And all hell breaks loose. It's like, I wouldn't do that. It's like, yeah, there's almost nothing you wouldn't do. You just don't know yourself very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the ability to set limits and to say no and to tell people that, you know, it's not right for you to bang on my house at this hour, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That takes a little bit of toughness on your part. You have to be kind of willing to put yourself on the line. Maybe that person will get angry and hit you or something, or maybe the war will escalate. But you have to be willing to take that risk, because if you don't, then you set no limits, and who knows what they'll end up doing. But a lot of this permissiveness is people are just basically afraid. They're afraid of any kind of confrontation. Yeah. They're afraid of any kind of conflict. And through conflict and confrontation is how you actually grow. It's actually how you develop as a person.
Hey, so here's a cool stat. This is really interesting, man. So there's been some great work on what behavioral markers predict divorce in couples counseling. Really solid work. Okay, so here's one predictor. When the couple is talking in front of a therapist and one of them or the other or both.
Okay, I just wanted to give you guys a little taste. You know what? This video is so long. I'm thinking what we should do is play a little bit of it every time I read, so we can kind of do like a dual thing. But yeah, I wanted you guys to hear a little bit of that interview. I'm going to wrap it up. So I think this was a really good start. This is a really good intro. And we're not going to read the entire book because it is really, really long, and print in this book is really, really small. I think that's why I had trouble reading it, besides the fact that I'm just really fucking tired. But we'll get, I'll read it in its entirety, and I will highlight chapters that I think are most pertinent to this fight that we're in. So y'all have a good night. Don't forget to follow me on TikTok at NotRedPillRage. Twitter, Rage Red Pill, Gab and Rumble, Red Pill Rage, and Instagram. Okay. And y'all get ready, save your pennies. I know some of y'all got paid today. Some of y'all going to get paid tomorrow. We have a fundraiser. We have some people we need to take care of. All right. Y'all have a good night.